Fall to the floor.
Finally, I get to review the brand new Happymodel Sailfly-X 105mm 2 to 3S racing quadcopter. Now, everybody calls this a toothpick quadcopter, but well, I've got a bit of a different opinion on that, because if you look at this quadcopter here, this is one of my old quads. It's a 90mm brush quadcopter in a wasp frame with 0820 brush coreless motors. The main flight controller, believe it or not, is a Blade Inductrix with a 600 TVL camera and a 200mW VTX, and it ran off a 1S 600mAh LiPo battery. Now, the reason why I wouldn't call it a toothpick is because these quads have been out for a long time. Apart from these, you get brushless motors, you get a 3-in-1 camera and VTX, and of course your main flight controller board. You can plug it into Betaflight, change all your settings and your ESC. So I would call this an MBQ. An MBQ stands for Micro Brushless Quadcopter. Now, enough of that, but that's just my opinion. You can pick it up in DSM2, DSM-X, FlySky, FrSky, or without a receiver. I picked this up in FrSky and I bound it up in D8 mode. If you want to change that, what you want to do is go into Betaflight, go into your configuration, and under the configuration tab, it's an SPI RX receiver, which we have here, and below that you want to change it to FrSky_X for D16, or for D8 you want to change it to FrSky_D to bind it up in that mode, and I'll tell you how to bind it up at the end of the video. Now, what do you get? You get propellers, 65mm in length the propellers are, but the only problem with them is they've got 1mm holes in them, and the new motors they put on the quad have 1.5mm shafts. Now, I had to drill out the props and I put a little bit of CA glue inside the hole just to make them a little bit snug. Once the CA glue had set in, I put the props on. I thought they were nice and tight. Used the stock battery, took it out for a flight, done a couple of flips, lost 2 props, and the quadcopter fell out of the sky. But fortunately, nothing had broke, and I tried it all over again and it worked. So I managed to fly. I wasn't doing any flips, but I did do some fast forward flight, and I didn't use the stock battery. I used a 2S battery instead. Now, what else do you get with the quadcopter? You get an extra 3D printed canopy, which is 30 degrees. The one that's on it at the moment is 40 degrees. And I must admit, I like these canopies because they're 3D printed and they're very flexible indeed. So that means in a crash, it will hold up. So if they're going to stay with anything, stay with the 3D printed canopy, but just brush them up and make them look a little bit better. And also, it's quite hard to get the camera in and out of here. You also get an extra battery holder to hold the battery in, which I'm not 100% keen on, for the simple fact is every time you put the battery in, this battery holder moves back and forward and it rubs against the bottom of the flight controller board. Now, that's not a very good idea, because it might take a chip, one of those little chips, off the board and cause a problem. You never know. You also get a screwdriver, a wrench, and some extra screws, which is in my fingers right here, and a battery strap if you want to use a battery strap. A manual that tells you everything that you need to know about the quadcopter, how to bind it up, and about the main flight controller itself. Now, talking about props, I did find out that the real AC R20 props are the exact same size with 1mm holes. So if you run out of prop, you could possibly use these, but I don't know the durability of them. That's the only problem, but there you go. There's one option just in case you run out of prop. Banggood are selling the original props with 1.5mm holes, and I'll link that in the description below. Now, the weight of the quad is 36 grams, and that's without the battery. And I'll bring the two batteries over here, because the stock battery you get is a 3-cell 300 milliamp HV LiPo battery with a T30 plug at the end. But I used that on the first run, and I decided to use a 2S LiPo instead, and it's the UAV 450 milliamp HV LiPo battery with an T30 plug as well. But it did come with a JST plug attached to it, and I just snipped that off at the end. The difference in the weight of them is the stock battery is 26 grams, and the 2S battery is a whopping 30 grams. That's because of the higher C rating. The length of both of the batteries is around 62 millimeters. The width of the 2S battery is 17.5 millimeters, and the stock one is 18.5 millimeters. The thickness of the 2S LiPo is 14.5 millimeters, and the thickness of the stock one is 18.5 millimeters. I'm also waiting on some MyLiPo DE2S LiPo batteries coming in. They are 333 milliamp HV LiPos, I do believe, with T30 plugs on them. I do prefer 2S for the simple fact this thing flies amazingly fast. I don't mind flying with 3S. You will see some flights of that coming up in future videos, but not at the moment, because like I said, I used the 2S LiPo at the moment now, and it was fast enough, and I wasn't even pushing it that hard at all. Now let's get round to the quadcopter itself. From motor shaft to motor shaft, it's about 107 millimeters, and the main motors are 1102 8500 kV brushless motors with that 1.5mm shaft, like I said, and it does have a C-clip at the top and also at the bottom, and that's to help prevent you from damaging the motor when you're putting the props on. The way you want to put the props on is push it on just a little bit at the top and lean it against something. Hold something against the shaft and push down just gently, but make sure you're not pushing against anything else. And once that prop's on, that should be you all good to go. Now the thickness of the frame is 2 millimeters, and you can see I put the main antenna from the flight controller board underneath the front leg, and the reason being it was sticking out at the front, and I didn't like that at all, because when you go to plug in the main battery, and the way I was plugging it in, as I was plugging it in from the front end, when you push it in, it could rub it against the main antenna, and it also gets stuck on the screw at the back here. But once you put the battery in and out the holder after a while, it's actually quite easy to get it in, and it just slides over the top. And just make sure you get your center of gravity sorted out so you can get a nice flight out of it. And just put the main balance lead round to the side like so. Now you might see that I've got my main cable tied at the back. That's because the battery will pop out in a crash, and also you've got a capacitor at the plug, the T30 plug, and the reason for that being was some of the boards, the MOSFETs and the 5-volt regulator were burning out when you were plugging the battery in, and that solves that problem. Also, you want to check where your wires are in the flight controller board, because the solder joints were basically touching my carbon fiber frame. What I've done is I've put a little bit of black tape underneath there at the moment to stop that. I'm going to take it apart and put some goop under there, and there won't be any problems with that. I did forget to mention the main motors are plug and play, so if anything happens to them, just unplug them and plug a brand new motor in, and you are good to go. The main camera itself is a plug and play as well, and it's an AIO 3-in-1 NTSC with 700 TVL lines and 120 field of view with 40 channels and a 25 milliwatt VTX. Now it does come with smart audio, so you can change the channels and bands through your transmitter, or you can press the button at the top here, right there, with a screwdriver, or you can go into the CLI tab in Betaflight, and in the manual it tells you where is it, right here. You can just type in whatever you want to change your bands and channels right there. But I would use smart audio, it's a lot smarter to use. Now, with a 415 amp each ESC Crazy Bee 4.2.1 main flight controller board, it has a built-in OSD with RSSI running Betaflight 4.0.0, and it's stated at 11th of December 2018, which is the release candidate. It's not the full release of that Betaflight version. Now what you might find is if you are running Betaflight Configurator, the latest version, which is 10.5.1, I do believe, some modes might not show up, or you might not be able to change the OSD. Then you might need to roll back your configurator or update Betaflight to the newest version to get everything working. But for me, I plugged it in and bound it up and everything was working fine. I had stability mode, air mode, turtle mode, but I don't use turtle mode for the simple reason is I do believe if you crash, you should go and check your quadcopter over first before you take off again. Now you can bind it up using the bind button. It's right in there at the right hand side. You also have a boot button on the left hand side, or you can plug it into Betaflight, go into the CLI tab and type in bind. The quadcopter, the lights on the quadcopter will go solid. Turn on your transmitter, hit bind on your transmitter, and the lights on the quad will start to flash, and that's you all bound up and ready to go. Guess what? That's everything for the whole of the quadcopter. I did use the 2S LiPo for the clips that are coming up, and I say clips because I did need to clip some of the footage because my son was out, he was being a spotter for me, and I had to stop a couple of times. You can get about 7 minutes out of this battery if you're just flying around, fast forward flying. But I do prefer the 3S LiPo. Just keep an eye out and there'll be more videos up and coming with the 3S LiPo battery in the quadcopter. All I've got to say is I hope you've enjoyed this little review. I hope you enjoy the flight footage that's coming up. Don't forget to like and subscribe and check the links in the description below. And as always, my friends, happy flying!
Sailfly.